Now we are here with our next scientific session with Professor R.K. Jena, who is going to give his talk on how I diagnose and treat ITP in pediatric and adult patients in 2020. The chairpersons for this session are Professor A.K. Tripathi and Professor Vinta Gupta ma'am. Now I request our speaker and chairpersons to please initiate the session.
So good afternoon. Dr. Jena does not need any introduction. He is well-known hematologist in the country and past president of Indian Society of Hematology. And while I was traveling from Lucknow to Banaras, I was reading Hindu paper published from Delhi, and there was an article focused on him that in any government hospital in India, he did maximum bone marrow transplantation, 75, and free of cost to the patient. So he needs, his work is very laudable. For that, you need compliment. So without wasting any time, I would request Dr. Jena to start his talk.
So thank you, Dr. Tripathi, and at the outset, my sincere thanks to Professor Vijay Tilak for inviting me to talk on this prestigious institute of the country, Banaras Hindu University. I have 4 or 5 sections. I will touch upon the how to diagnose ITP in 2020. I always tell it's a clinician's diagnosis, not the hematologist. It should not be diagnosed as pathology. I always a firm believer it's a clinician. It should be diagnosed at the bedside. Second, how to manage the pediatric ITP, managing the adult ITP, how to approach a resistant ITP. If the time permits, I can touch upon how to handle the ITP in pregnancy, all 4 cases based on the real cases. So before I start, just to introduce some of the few terminology to the young postgraduates or residents, ITP is now defined as immune thrombocytopenia, not the idiopathic thrombocytopenia. Every statement has been supported by evidence or by the expert panel, but for the interest of the time, I won't go. Whatever I am telling you are all the standard practice and information which you believe as on today. So ITP is being called as immune thrombocytopenia, not the idiopathic, because we know the cause. So the idiopathic has been dropped. The thrombocyte has been defined when the count is less than 1 lakh per cubic millimeter, again based on these certain data. Third, we call it as newly diagnosed when it's up to 3 months. It's a persistent ITP. If the duration of the disease is 3 to 12 months, if it's a chronic ITP, means if it's beyond 12 months, we call it as chronic ITP. Just to brief you the pathogenesis of the ITP, the abnormality of the key player here is the T cell. There is a decrease in the T regulatory cells and the increase in the ratio of the thymic 1 and thymic 2 cells. So all these 2 changes, that leads to a break in immune tolerance. As you know, the so-called ITP, whatever the surface antigen like 2B3A or IB-IX is there over the normal megakaryocyte platelet, they are being recognized our lymphoreticular system as the host antigen. If these changes occur, there is a break in the immune tolerance which leads to these antigen presenting cells. They recognize these platelet antigen as foreign, so they present to the T cell. T cell gets activated, which leads to B cell activation, and B cell activation produces these anti-platelet antibodies, which goes and bind with the platelet, and they are being removed by the spleen by the Fc receptors. The same antibody of a different class can come to the bone marrow and can also knock out the megakaryocytes which is there in the production, which is there in the bone marrow. So if you look at the bone marrow finding, it can be accelerated, it can be normal, even it can be depressed megakaryopoiesis also. There are 3 probability you can see in a case of ITP, though it's believed as a classical, it is an accelerated megakaryopoiesis, but in roughly 30 to 40% cases, it can be normal or it can be depressed by attack of this antibody. So this is how the immunological play in the genesis of ITP. Now let's go to case number 1. It's a pediatric case. A 6-year-old child with a cutaneous bruising and fatigue. There was no additional bleed or organomegaly. His platelet count was about 8,000. So there was no other clinical features. I have cut short for the interest of time. The issues to be discussed is what are the investigations you require to go for the or to confirm the diagnosis? What are the DDs? and what are the, how to reach a diagnosis and how to approach this case. If you look at the minimum investigations which have been recommended by this international working group and the AS guidelines 2011, the additional test which should be done in all the cases that includes HIV, HC and direct home test. So these tests should be done in all cases to exclude the secondary causes which are common later on. The test for secondary causes, you have so many other diseases which can cause to a thrombocytopenia also. I'll just touch on my next slide. So depending on the clinical presentation and features, you have to decide which investigations you want to do. It's not that all investigations should be done in every patient. It will really increase the workload and also unnecessary also. It's a taxing to the patients also. So depending on the clinical presentations and your clinical differential diagnosis, you can choose what are the investigations to choose to exclude the other primary causes. And the bone marrow and the antiplatelet antibodies are not required for the diagnosis of ITP is concerned. Again, it has been based on so many findings that if you follow 340 or 380 patients, if you don't if you go for the bone marrow evaluations and not going for one bone marrow evaluation, the chance of them missing the diagnosis is only 2. So 99.8% cases you are right in the diagnosis if you do not go for the bone marrow evaluation. It is a classical presentation of ITP. That's how we stand at present. So the bone marrow study is not required. It is official now. The bone marrow study is not required so for diagnosis of ITP is concerned. So for the differential diagnosis is concerned, these are the conditions which I will skip it. It is there in the textbook. There is nothing new. SLE, Apla syndrome, Evans syndrome, various drugs, infections, lymphoproliferative disorders, various vaccinations, common variable immunodeficiency, and bone marrow transplant side effects. These are the authenticated or well-recognized causes which can give rise to your thrombocytopenia. Again, dealing with a case of thrombocytopenia and clinical presentations, you have looked for these other investigations to reach your diagnosis on ITP. So this is the sky diagram. If you look at the thrombocytopenia, 80% of the totality they are primary, means ITP, no cause can be ascertained. However, you can cause the SLE and other causes which I have already told. So you have to go for this differential diagnosis is concerned. So diagnosis of ITP is at the bedside to be done because if there is isolated thrombocytopenia, means less than 1 lakh per cubic millimeter, and exclusion of secondary causes. Depending on the clinical presentation, you have excluded all the possible causes which can give rise to thrombocytopenia. So these are the two most important points for the diagnosis of ITP is concerned. If you got the response to therapy like either IVIG or anti-D or corticosteroid, your diagnosis of ITP is reinforced, but it's not mandatory as a clinical because it comes later on. As I have told you earlier, the bone marrow examination is not required, and the reticulocyte or the reticulate platelet nowadays, so many investigations are given. It varies from 2.5 to 24%. It's a very non-specific. It does not solve any purpose. Similarly, antiplatelet autoantibody screening test is less than 50% sensitivity, so these are not required. So for diagnosis of ITP, the most clinical features or the most important features which require isolated thrombocytopenia and the exclusion of secondary causes. So diagnosis of ITP is essentially exclusion, but by the exclusion at the bedside by the clinicians, we found out that isolated thrombocytopenia without any atypical features like lymphadenopathy, organomegaly or atypical cells in the peripheral blood, your diagnosis you will be 99.8% correct if you want the two things if you diagnose ITP also. So case number 1, continue. Do this child need treatment? So before deciding the treatment, you have to consider the severity of the bleed, means whether the dry bleed or wet bleed. As you know, the wet bleed is being defined as if there is a addition of any mucocutaneous bleed like epistaxis, hematuria or hematomasis or menorrhagia. This is called wet purpura or wet bleeding, which is more severe. The goal of the management of ITP is that you never change the normal platelet count. You only try to maintain the hemostatic platelet count, which is much more inferior than the normal platelet count. No need to change the normal platelet count. And if you look at the overall statistics in pediatric ITP, the good news is that multiple series have shown that the severe hemorrhage is 0.5%, intracranial hemorrhage is 0.6%. Whatever you do, whether you treat or don't treat, the severe hemorrhage or intracranial hemorrhage is extremely limited in pediatric ITP patients. And if you look at the natural history, there is a spontaneous remission. So most of the patients have a spontaneous remission. And the most important is that No treatment alter the natural history of the disease. Your treatment, whatever it you may is, you may raise the platelet count quickly. It's a cosmetic effect. So for the natural history of the ITP is concerned, if they mild ITP, if you go for early treatment versus observation, it's the same outcome. And that is a caveat, of course. If a patient comes from very far away, you cannot follow it up. Is aggressive patients have some active say time which is there, you may consider to treat even if it does not have any benefit for that. Of course, the finance is very important because the management varies from observation to IVIG, which can cost even up to 1 lakh rupees also. So finance is an important aspect. So you have to consider so many factors while deciding for the management of ITP is concerned. This is a very important ticket trial in pediatric ITP when the platelet count was less than 30,000, phase 3 randomized trial. So what they have given to the early patients, to the some patients, they have one group, 102 patients, they have given IVIG, and to the equal number of the patients also, they have gone for observations also. Similar presentation, similar platelet count. So what they have seen that even if the platelet count was raised at say 1 week and 1 month and 1 month, if you look at 3 months, 6 months and 12 months and the overall scenario, does not make any difference. The p-value is less than p-value is insignificant. So if you are treating a mild ITP pediatric patients in comparison to observations, though you are raising the platelet count quickly and the platelet count becomes normal at the 1 week or 1 month or at 3 months, beyond 3 months, at 3 months, 6 months or 1 year, they land in the same boat. So IVIG, the most potent therapy, does not make any difference with a mild ITP. So basing on these facts and everything, the treatment recommendation in pediatric ITP is that if there is no bleeding or mild bleeding, means dry blood, irrespective of the platelet count, even if the platelet count is 1,000, the management is that you don't have to do anything. You just observe, wait, and once intervene when the severity of the bleeding occurs. So that's the guideline. Both American Society of Hematology and the British Society of Hematology strongly recommend in this clinical setting not do anything, wait and watch. So those patients, after 7 days, you develop epistaxis and hematuria. The platelet count was 7,000. Of course, this is a clear-cut now indication that you need further treatment. So now the treatment is indicated at the mucocutaneous component has been added. So the first line treatment options are you have observations, you have corticosteroid, IVIG, and anti-D. And there is no preference. Again, the trials have shown that there may be rapidity. So the IVIG raise the platelet count in 24 hours, anti-D raise in 72 hours. Steroids may go on the 2 weeks. But at the end of the 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year, even after 5 years, they land in the same boat. So there is no preference. So for the choosing the first line therapy is concerned. However, if there is a need to, there is another reason also. People have tried, if there is a need to raise the platelet, so in this case, we have given the oral prednisolone and the platelet count was raised up to 2 lakhs, more than 2 lakhs at the end of the 2 weeks. So the treatment, you have to always consider the cost. If there is any need to raise the platelet count very quickly, as quick as possible, because if the patient needs any surgical procedure or if the infants which are impending intracranial hemorrhage, in that case you can use IVIG. You can IVIG the quickest acting drugs to raise the platelet count. Anti-D is equally good also. It is really matching with the half the cost. And IV methylprednisolone pulse at the rate of 30 mg per kg for the 2 days is equally good also. Within a span of the 72 hours, you can raise the platelet count to the hemostatic level. We have used, I have personally used extensively this anti-D, and we have used at a dose of 75 microgram per kg, and we have seen that almost 80% of patients, they have a hemostatic level of the platelet count with a median at a time of 72 hours, and it matches with equally with the IVIG also. With the half the cost, there are certain limitations also, which I'll comment on later on. The case number 2 is an adult patient, female 28 years old, cutaneous fatigue. The platelet count was sitting on 9,000. All the parameters was consistent with the ITP. It's an isolated thrombocytopenia without anything else or without any important features in the clinical finding. The issues to be discussed again, exactly the similar things, investigations, DD and diagnosis and management. I will skip the investigations because similar with the pediatric patients. DD also again the same thing, but so for management is concerned, the natural history and the management is slightly but different from the pediatric and adult ITP. You have to consider age. If you look at the age, so with the similar platelet count of less than 30,000, as the age advances, if it is less than 40 years, 40 to 60 or more than 60, the incidence of the fatal hemorrhage gradually increases. It has been explained also reason why in adults with the same platelet count, the fatal hemorrhage increases. The second is, all the studies have shown that any adult, contrary to the pediatric patient, irrespective of the platelet count, you have to observe, in an adult, if the less than 30,000, is prone for high risk bleed. And third is, you have to consider the severity of the bleeding, the risk factor of the bleeding like alcoholism or liver dysfunction or any renal component or any other diseases which can aggravate the bleeding, activity level, whether the patient is sedentary or is active executive or what are the need for the say initial 2 to 3 days. The likely side effects of the treatment, patient's preference, opportunity finance. So these are the points which you have to consider. And in adult, it has been well recognized that contrary to the pediatric ITP, the platelet count is less than 30,000. That's the trigger point to go for the treatment irrespective of the severity of the bleeding. So now the indications for treatment as per the AS 2011 guideline in adult is that if the platelet count is less than 30,000, irrespective of the bleeding, it's indicated for treatment. Or if it is more than 30,000 with less than 50,000 with a significant bleeding means with a weight component, you should go for the management. Or you should go for the treatment. Again, similarly, you have 3 approved drugs which are approved for the first line therapy. One is corticosteroid, IVIG, and anti-D. The first line therapy, people have tried dexamethasone pulse therapy in adult 40 milligram. I usually prefer this drug, 40 milligram per day, 4 days in a week for 2 to 4 weeks versus prednisolone in the usual dose. Again, studies have shown that initially there may be some difference, but at the end of the study, there is no preference. So far the steroid preference is concerned, whether Dexa versus prednisolone, there is no preference. You can choose any of the steroids also. Now people have tried to augment this steroid effect in the initial phase by adding the rituximab. So there are 2 randomized studies. They have added with dexamethasone pulse with the rituximab, and what they have seen that though on the initial level or at the end of the level the remission rate is very, very high, but in the initial phase you go for the high dose dexa, the count increment is better in combination group. Though in the long run, if you go for the rituximab and dexamethasone, you may have a better result, but in the initial 28 days, you need to have additional therapy to raise the platelet count in initial 28 days is much more in combination, roughly 47 with a versus with the DEXA group. And the most importantly, we need additional data for the super safety and quality of life and the major bleeding is concerned with this one combination. So till today, we cannot recommend this combination drug as initial therapy. So as on today, corticosteroid alone is the preferred first-line therapy in both pediatric and adult ITP, except in emergency situation, you want to raise the platelet count as quick as possible. Now the case number 2, he received the patient received oral prednisolone. He had a satisfactory response, but he relapsed after 3 months, and the platelet count was come down to again 15,000, which is a very typical feature in many cases in adult, particularly in females. Now the question comes, how to treat an ITP when first-line drug fails? So before I go, I must admit or I must confess that there is no randomized study or a prospective study. There are very, very less. There is no standard of care. It is only whatever I am telling is derived from the consensus statement from the experts guidelines like RAS guidelines or whatever the expert panel for that. So before I go to this recommendation, let's have a look at the natural history of the chronic ITP. If you follow 105 resistant ITP for about 9 years, roughly 80% at the end of the 9 years, they have a stable ITP. They have a natural recovery. In certain patients in chronic ITP, the spontaneous remission or achieving the normal platelet count is very slow with a median year of the 5 years. And at the end of the 9 years, 80% have a stable ITP, stable platelet count. And in between, if the platelet count comes down to less than 30, they are unstable and symptomatic with bleeding. If it is in between 32 and 50, they are asymptomatic and they have a hemostatic level. So that is how a chronic ITP behaves in the 9 years. And out of these 80%, say 51 means 2/3 of the patients have stopped the therapy. And most importantly, so only 1/3 is on the maintenance one therapy. And the most important point is that remissions occurs slowly in the median period of 4 years, and you are no treatment, whatever you choose, does not alter the natural history of the disease. And so far, many of the studies have shown that it is the setting of the chronic ITP. So your drug-induced or drug therapy or iatrogenic toxicity is one of the leading cause of the morbidity and mortality in chronic ITP. So what we should be very, very careful in selecting the drugs. So our approach will be, if the patient is in between, say, 30,000 or less than 30,000, there is a need or about the patient is symptomatic, you should try to give some kind of a therapy to raise the platelet count, so more than 30,000 or 50,000. If the patient's platelet count is in between 30 to 50, you don't have to do anything. If the patient platelet count is more than 50, you are absolutely relaxed and fine, usually asymptomatic, that's a hemostatic platelet level. So that is our concept of the management of the resistant or chronic ITP. Then we'll go ahead. So before that, I will show another cartoon selecting the drugs also. If you look at the therapeutic options available in chronic ITP, this is the most important slide. If you understand the whole chronic ITP, resistant ITP is understood, you have many options available. One is corticosteroids, IVIG, anti-D, and danazole or vinca alkaloids, which are the reserve drugs. And if you look at the site of the mechanism of the actions, that's different. As for example, the steroids, they act, they reduces the antibody productions and also down regulates the Fc receptors. As you know, the antigen antibody bound platelet are being eliminated, are being hemolyzed by the reticular endothelial system through the Fc receptors. So steroid inhibits the antibody production and down regulates the Fc receptors. If you look at the IVIG, IVIG blocks the Fc receptors without having any effort so far the antibody production is concerned. If you look at the anti-D coats with your platinum RBC, and that anti-D coated RBC, they go on the engages with the Fc receptors. Means they sacrifice themselves by engaging the Fc receptors and spare your platelet count. So here is the 3 approved drugs which are used in the ITP, having a different mode of actions and with having a not overlapping side effects also. So it makes a sense in a resistance case. If you combine the drugs, it augments the effect of the ITP, or you can really improve the platelet count without having any adverse drug reaction. That is the hypothesis. So that shows that if you can combine the various drugs, they have a different mode of action with a non-overlapping side effects. So that's the principle which you derive. The second point which I want to tell, look at that you have a splenectomy, you have a TPO receptor agonist and so on. If you look at the D cells, all these on the left side of the cartoon, there is a T cell activation I told you in my first cartoon. It stimulates the B cell, it activates the B cell, which B cell produces the antiplatelet antibody, and this antiplatelet antibody causes damage. The chronicity, what is the cause of the chronicity? It is the continuous activation of the T cell, which leads the B cell activation, therefore the constant production of the antiplatelet antibody, that gives you fuel in igniting the autoimmunity and thereby when causing the low platelet count. So if you look at the chronic ITP, the management is concerned, it is the drugs which act on T cell and B cells, they are being used so far the chronic ITP is concerned. The drugs are on the T cells you can use for steroid, as cyclophosphamide or cyclosporin, they are immunosuppressants. You can go for B cell depleting cells like rituximab also, which is a very B20 or which is a very B cell depleting agent so far the chronic ITP is concerned. So the chronic or resistant ITP have a 2 mode of the action, means acute management and chronic management. Acute management means when you need to raise the platelet count, you have to combine these either corticosteroids, IVIG or anti-D in a various combination, 2 or 3 combination that augments the effect and without having any additional side effects. And the maintenance therapy, you can choose either the drugs acting on T cells or acting on B cells to give a time, just to buy a time, allow the patient to in the endohemostatic level so that the patient will have a natural and spontaneous recovery so far the chronic ITP is concerned. That is essential, the concept of the management of resistance or chronic ITP. So the types of treatment, I can now skip it. It can have emergency or maintenance therapy. Emergency means you need to raise the platelet count. If it is less than 30,000, there is a need for any surgical interventions, or you need to raise the platelet count as quick as possible for any reasons. You have a various combinations. You can go for methylprednisolone, IVIG, anti-D or high-dose dexamethasone. And again, to support that hypothesis also, we have one randomized study which have shown that there were 35 patients of the chronic resistant ITP, both adult and pediatric patients. They were resistant to the first-line drugs when used individually. So what they used, they there was a need to raise the platelet count. So there was combination. I won't go to detail for the interest of time. What they have seen that if you combine these drugs, these patients who are not responding to one single drug, there can be response in 70% cases also. So hypothesis which I shown you in that cartoon, it has been proved by this randomized trial that combination of the drugs in a resistant setup can raise the platelet count in 70% of the cases also. So if there is a need for rise of platelet count, there is no standard combination. You can go for IVIG, IV methylprednisolone. I choose because these are cheap. But you can go for IVIG, anti-D, IV, say methylprednisolone, anti-D, or any combination. There is no standard recommendation for combination is concerned. So for maintenance therapy is concerned, because you have prolonged this recovery so that you can span or you can buy more time, few years to have a spontaneous remission. Then these are drugs which are used. You can go for splenectomy, rituximab with dexamethasone, or TPO receptor agonist, or other various reserve drugs which I have told you for that also. If you look at the splenectomy, you have almost so many studies. Probably the most efficient method, the means to raise the platelet count is the response rate vary roughly 60 to 90%. Almost all the studies have shown. All the studies have shown. This is interesting data. There is one study for which there were 21 patients who were diagnosed as resistant ITP. They were kept for splenectomy, advised for splenectomy. But however, the patient didn't agree, and they were continued maintenance therapy with danazone and prednisolone. They followed for 8 years. To the surprise, it was found that out of 21, 10 patients landed with a normal platelet count, and 11 patients with having a stable platelet count which is more than 50,000. And the treatment was stopped in all the cases. That opened the eyes of the clinicians. You know the complications of the splenectomy, and God is not full to put a spleen in the human being body. It has a lot of complications, but you can avoid splenectomy in adult patients. This is an eye-opener. So then the clinicians started looking at very critically so far the splenectomy is concerned. The current status of splenectomy is that in US and Europe it has decreased from 50 to almost 20%, and patients are nowadays hesitant. Indian ISPD guideline again non-competent, and other you utilize other therapeutic options, and the splenectomy should be deferred. In pediatric patients certainly for 1 year, and in adult patients certainly for 6 months. So now if you look at the splenectomy trends, it is decreasing, coming down because of the understanding in a better way and availability of the other drugs. Now the rituximab almost 7, except one study almost, so RACE-6 study was done, it's very effective, and its response varies from 40 to 60%. And if you combine with dexamethasone, it augments the response almost. So 3 studies have shown that both in pediatric and adult patients, if you go for rituximab and dexamethasone, it can augment the response also. Now come the newer version or the newer option available is the TPO receptor agonist. Here the principle is that in ITP, the platelet production is normal or decreased in most cases, but the plasma TPO level is not increased. Eltrombopag and romiflozin have increased the production, they are equally effective. This is not curative because it goes on, once you stop the therapy, its effect rapidly wins out after you stop the therapy also. If you look at the TPO receptor, both eltrombopag and romiflozin, almost 6 randomized trials have shown that is very effective, and the effect varies, or the response varies more than 80%. So for romiflozin is concerned, 13 clinical trials have shown that even the effect can be more than 80%, equally effective also. Now impact of TPO receptor agonist has shown that it has decreased the splenectomy tremendous. That is the main factor why the splenectomy nowadays has come down. It creates a greater platelet response, and the quality of life is good, and cost and side, which is a very costly drug. However, you have to consider the things also. So TPO receptor agonist has being nowadays being increasingly used. So now you have to choose between splenectomy, so rituximab, and TPO receptor agonist, because the ASH guideline came in 2011. Now a lot of new data has come. Now there is the interim expert committee by the American Society of Hematology has given their verdict, which the new guideline will come probably the next year or within this year, probably towards latter part. They compare splenectomy, rituximab, dexamethasone, and TPO receptor agonist. If you look at the remission rate, still the splenectomy is having the highest, 77% comparison to these other two. If you look at the durable of the remission at the end of 1 year, still it is the highest with splenectomy in comparison to these two. But if you look at the long-term safety data, that's the where the splenectomy loses the match. If you look at the long-term safety data and undesirable side effects are maximum here with splenectomy, the advantage goes to the TPO receptor agonist, and the second option is rituximab dex. So considering the long-term data safety, the interim report has shown that so far the chronicity is concerned maintenance, the finance is not a problem. This is the drug of choice. However, the alternative is rituximab and dexamethasone combination. With the other second-line drugs, you have dapsone, aza, dana, cyclosporine, mycophenolate, and cyclophosphamide. You can consider there is no standard protocol. You can use these drugs in combination. The median response rate usually takes about 3 to 6 months. You have to continue for 2 years. There is no standard way how to withdraw. You gradually withdraw from your clinical response. You can withdraw one and then the two. So this dapsone and azathioprine is a good combination which is used by the many of the Indians, including by me. So dapsone 2 mg per kg, azathioprine 2 mg kg. Continue for a few months, then gradually withdraw one, then after one. That's a good drug. I think I'll skip the lady one to consider the ITP in pregnancy. There is no time. I'll come to my summary slide. This is a real case of how I manage the ITP in pregnancy. So how to treat ITP in 2020? First is it is a clinician's diagnosis by exclusion. Is isolated with thrombocytopenia. You excluded all other causes. You have diagnosed it as ITP. Assess the bleeding severity is the key, because the bleeding severity depends or varies from the pediatric and adult patients. If the patient is a pediatric patient or adult patient, depending on the criteria which I told, you can go for wait and watch, or you can go for the treatment is indicated. If the treatment is indicated, you have to choose with a steroid, IVIG, anti-D, and the steroid is the approved first line therapy. All three are approved, but the steroid is preferred because the cost use is very extensive like that. But if there is a need to raise the platelet count to an early possibility, you can consider IVIG, anti-D, or IV methylprednisolone also. When the first line drug fails, you have to first reconfirm the diagnosis or exclude the other causes. Because here you may go for the bone marrow evaluation. You may miss some of the evolving MDS, hypoplastic anemia, or other diseases. You first reconfirm the diagnosis and exclude the other causes. Then you have to differentiate between. If the platelet count is more than 30,000 stable, asymptomatic, don't do anything. Observe and just allow the patient to have a spontaneous remission, because here the treatment will cause enhanced morbidity and mortality. If the platelet count is less than 30,000, unstable or symptomatic, then you decide whether you require emergency treatment or maintenance therapy. If there is emergency treatment because of any surgical indication or life-threatening bleeding, you can go for the combination of IVIG, IV methylprednisolone, anti-D. There is no recommended combination. You can choose depending on the patient's financial. If there is no emergency and the patient needs maintenance therapy, you have three options. You have rituximab or TPO receptor agonist. You have to choose the TPO receptor first preference. If the cost is a factor, you can go for rituximab or dex. Or if the other options is that you can go for the reserve drugs for our patients who can't afford for both the modalities. You can go for these reserve drugs, either dapsone, azathioprine, danazole, or mycophenolate and mapolate, any 2 or 3 combinations. Give for a year and then gradually withdraw one by one. There is no method to tell you how you withdraw. Depending on the clinical response and the platelet count, you have to withdraw one, then the second one also. Delay this splenectomy. Splenectomy is not people to delay as far as you can. To be honest, I have never advised a patient of resistant to ITP to go for a splenectomy, even till today also. With this, thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, it was very comprehensive, very detailed presentation. Question from the audience, right? Dr.
So that was a very exhaustive lecture. I'm a pediatrician. I look after pediatric hematology oncology. So in one slide you showed that the anti-D, the use of anti-D is may be the first line. But the problem with anti-D is that the IV preparation is not available. I mean, we have tried using it, but most of the times what you get in the market is the IM preparation, not the IV preparation. So what has been your experience? Is it easy to get in that part?
No, madam. I have used extensible anti-D and it's available. It's available. Anti-D preparation is available provided if you demand it. It's available. It's a good drug.
So will you use it as a first line?
Yes, it is approved. It is so far the
No,
approved.
it is approved, but,
Yes, I have
but
used.
in
I have
practical
used.
terms.
Yeah, I have used and I have published also. If you look at that literature also, I have used 90 patients at a dose of both the doses. I have used at 75 microgram and 50 microgram, and I found that 20% higher response rate if you go for the 75 microgram. There is a caveat if you look if you are using the anti-D, means your DCT must be negative and it must be your RH should be positive. So these are the caveat, and that should be splenic and normal splenic function also.
And
In
the cutoff
absence
for
of
the hemoglobin as well. It should not be used below the hemoglobin 9.
Hemoglobin is a grossly anemic, because if you are using the anti-D, again our study have shown that may be falling the hemoglobin about to 1 and maximum 2 gram percent. If you can accommodate 2 gram percentage or 1 gram percent, you can go for that also. If it's a really anemic, say 5 or 6 like that, I will be reluctant to use.
Thank you.
What is the mechanism of action of Dapsone? How does it function? How
I showed you
increases-
in that much cartoon. These are the T cell silencers. Your Dapsone, Aja, mycophenolate, Mamaplate is concerned, because that is the T cell constant activations that leads to whatever you are using as a fast line therapy, be it steroid, be it IVIG or anti-D. IVIG have a say 2 weeks duration of action. In a chronic setting, the effect of the IVIG, the wins after 2 weeks, and at the end of the 4 weeks, again went back to normal. So it's the constant activation of the T cell which subsequently activates the B cell. Therefore, there is a constant antibody production which causes the thrombocytopenia.
But I think a
in that
mechanism.
circumstances, you have used for a long period.
What is the dose? Because the leprosy, Dapsone is given in the leprosy where the cell-mediated immunity is already markedly depressed. And it has been found that when the Dapsone is given, CMI returns back.
Yes,
So here there is a reverse.
because we face the same problem also. The adoption was withdrawn from the market, but anyway, a majority of the patients, they saw the market, they got it also. Now it has been again reintroduced also. We use as a dose of 2
Gina,
milligrams.
it's neither immune suppression nor immune activation. It is immune regulation. Modulation because of Th1, Th2 response. It's very complicated. Yes, Dr. Sanjay Mishra. Yeah.
So very nice presentation, and just one query in my mind always exists as far as ITP is concerned. It's a clinical diagnosis, so most of the time when the patient responds, it's okay. But when it doesn't respond, then it's we go retrograde, we do the bone marrow, and then the clinician's query. I'm a pathologist, so clinician's query whether the patient is not responding, is there any additional cause? So, sir, when the patient is adult, then we are in a dilemma of 3 things, like, whether it is hypomegakaryocytic or amegakaryocytic thrombocytopenia which is not responding, or it is ITP which is not responding, or it is third is like hypomegakaryocytic, and so, the dilemma exists. Then
Yes.
you say it is a clinical diagnosis. So on the bedside, how do you, what is your approach in differentiating all these aspects?
Actually, these points were raised and this has been addressed also. I will recommend you to go through under what basis this bone marrow evaluation has been dropped from the standard investigation procedures from the American Society of Hematology guidelines. Nobody does it also. Every point has been addressed. So let me briefly address your point. Even the pediatric hematologists who are very much concerned that once you are using the steroid, etc., you may miss the diagnosis of ALL. It has been again debated also, because so they have followed 340 or 60 patients of the isolated by thrombocytopenia on one arm, and on the other arm also. In one arm they have not done anything. They have not gone for bone marrow evaluation. On the other arm, they have gone for the bone marrow evaluation. They found 4 cases. They are having a different diagnosis. One was evolving hypoplastic anemia. One was evolving aplastic anemia. There was 2 also. Look, so far the standard procedure is concerned, you never judge from 1 or 2 cases rare of the rare. It is in 19, if a procedure is not required or if you are correct in diagnosing a case without this procedure in 99% of cases, so it cannot be considered as a standard procedure for the evaluation concern. When you will go for, even it has been mentioned, the second point now let us come. So non-response to IVIG, again it has been addressed also to that point, that even if the patient does not respond to the IVIG, you have so many causes, you have so many reasons also, depending on the profile of antibody. If the antibody is a 2A and 3B directed, there the response is good. If it is a 1B and IX, the IVIG does not respond. If a lack of response does not mandate to go for the bone marrow in adult, where you will go for the bone marrow? If you are going on atypical cells, if there is atypical presentations like your lymphadenopathy, organomegaly, if the other cell line is being suppressed along with the TPC, or if it is not consistent with your amount of the bleeding, do you have a overt anemia or leukopenia, atypical cells like that? If the patient remains for a long time, so chronicity, if you have a resistant chronic ITP more than 1 year, to jump to your other diagnosis or other therapeutic, you can reassess your and confirm the diagnosis. In that setting where you can go for the bone marrow. I think this happened with a similar thing also. Day before yesterday, one of our colleagues, assistant professor relations, was isolated by thrombocytopenia. They insisted to go for the bone marrow. I told no. Start IVIG and the platelet count jumps to 2 lakhs. There are certain cases where you will limp, but this is only 0.1, so less than 1% cases. So basing on 1% cases, it cannot be considered as a standard.
As an erythroid lineage, we have as an erythroid lineage, we have terminology of PRCA, we have terminologies of RCUD, dysplasia. Why not for megakaryocyte? Because these entities must be existing in literature, but they might be responding to whatever therapy we are giving.
With due humility, I must tell in a very lighter way. Diagnosis of ITP has slipped from the pathology, from the laboratory. It has slipped. Because if you look at the bone marrow findings of ITP, it's a non-specific. It can be accelerated, which you call it as a typical. It's never called nowadays typical. It can be accelerated, it can be normal, it can be suppressed also. In 30%, if you look at all the recent literature, you got even 30% cases, it can be normal or it can be suppressed also. So the bone marrow finding does not give any typical feature of so far the ITP is concerned. ITP today is the clinician's diagnosis.
Last question,
Yes, sir.
if any. We're waiting for lunch, yeah. Mike, please.
How many times have you seen Dapsone being withdrawn from the treatment of ITP because of development of BITE cells?
Because I usually go for these GCSPD activities testing, and because it is shown that GCSPD deficiencies, it causes hemolytic anemia. But
Baseline before you start Dapsone?
yes, definitely, because definitely once you do it, I always go for the GCSPD activity, then I could go for that. Dapsone is either, look, it's not that Dapsone, because it's cheap, it was easily available, so Dapsone was combined with the azathioprine. Azathioprine is one of the most widely used, very safe, it can be used in pregnancy also. That's why it's chosen. But there is no standard, there is no head-to-head comparison to give advantage to Dapsone and Aza in comparison to your cyclosporine, mycophenolate or your other drugs. So there is no standard combination is available.
Okay, so for the interest of time, we are closing the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the illuminating talk. I now request Professor A.K. Tripathi to honor Professor R.K. Jena. I now request Professor R.K. Jena, sir, to honor Professor R.K. Tripathi, sir, and Professor Vinita Gupta, ma'am. Before we break for lunch, sorry. Before we break for lunch, a few announcements. The inaugural function will start at 2:15 p.m. So please reconvene here at 2:15 sharp for the inaugural function. There is a feedback form available with your kit. Kindly fill the feedback form and please hand it over to our volunteers either after lunch or after inaugural function. And the book, Algorithmic Approaches to Hematological Cases, are now available in the counters
at a 50% discount. If you need them, if you want them, then you can avail it. And now we'll have a lunch break and reconvene at 2:15 p.m. sharp. Thank you.